Okay, we're recording.
Okay, welcome everybody to the work session. On the agenda today, we have quite a few items, so let's get started. First thing on the agenda is Growing Together Silhouette Mural Update. Well, Pam did a wonderful job with the proposal at the City Council meeting on May 4th. And it was accepted by the City Council, showed unanimous support for it. And I would like to have Jeff talk a little bit about what the next step is.
Sure. So in the proposal, there was a request for urban renewal funding. And so the Sandy Urban Renewal Agency Board, which consists of the City Council plus, I believe, the fire chief and the chamber director, that group will be meeting on June the 1st, that's a week from Monday, to consider that funding request. And so I believe it was not to exceed $20,000. Although there will be a fundraising effort as well, so perhaps that will mitigate some of that cost. So the Urban Renewal Board will consider that request on June 1st, and there'll be an opportunity to say a few words about the project, although not as much about the artistic component of it, because the project's already been supported by the council. This is more about the funding request. And so Commissioner Smithstead and Becky, as the artist, will be available to answer those questions and say a few words about that. So we're looking at probably, oh gosh, I don't have it in front of me. I think, yeah, it should be right at 6 o'clock. It should be 6 o'clock for that on June the 1st. And we'll have approximately a half hour. But a lot of that, I assume, will be questions and discussion. I don't think the actual presentation ought to be very long at all. I think most of it will just be discussion and Q&A. So.
And that's going to be a Zoom meeting like this one, where anyone here who would like to be on the line and listen in, I think it would be a really a lesson on what the Urban Renewal Board is and does, and give us a little bit of knowledge on how that's handled, because it's, I think, all new to the commissioners. So
Also, I think it would be
how it works, but
it would be a plus for Sandy Arts Commission to just be seen as much as we can. So.
I know that I wasn't around at the inception of this mural project. Can someone give me just a short history of what was involved? Did we seek bids? Did we seek proposals? Or did we just come up with one ourselves, approve it ourselves, give it to the council and have them approve it?
It was, okay. So just a real quick thing. I think you should have the proposal in your last meeting.
I have the proposal. I just don't know
the proposal.
Of it
so
was.
the building owner came to me personally, and we were in the Ace Hardware buying stuff together, and he said he'd sure like to see another mural on the back of his building. And I said, well, I'd take a look at it and see what I could come up with. And when I looked at it, I felt that another standard mural, like the one that was already on there, would be competition. They would compete with each other visually, and it would make one or the other of them look out of place.
When Brad said that he wanted another like paired mural with the one that's on the back of his building, did he say he was going to fund part of it, or had money to put into it, or was he just offering the blank canvas, so to speak?
It was my understanding that he was offering an easement, as he did for the other mural.
And we never considered asking for ideas or submissions, or we just did it in-house?
Well, he asked me personally, not as an arts commissioner.
Oh, okay.
And I personally took the project and looked at it. And then I worked on it for several weeks. And then I submitted as an artist my proposal to the city commissioners and stepped away, not wearing the hat as the chair. And Marcia presented it at the meeting. Matter of fact, I lost connectivity and I was not in the meeting. Marcia presented it. It was also presented at the public forum and also at the
We had very limited public input forums,
Huh?
right? At the forums, we had very limited, like less than a handful of people that showed up from the public.
And it was taken to the Sandy Garden Club. It was taken to the commissioners forum that they had in the basement or the lower level of the community center. And so it was brought to our meetings once. So anyway, so
I was just curious as if it followed, if there was any kind of, if there has previously been any standard format set up for taking, you know, if we're going to take on a project, if it's just, if this would be the norm that we would do or not the norm
no,
that we would do.
there isn't anything set up for how we're going to do it, but that's a part of the art master plan.
Right.
And so in the art master plan, there will be a submission policy. And so if it were me doing it, I would be submitting according to the art submission form and however that's set up. Also, there should be a conflict of interest policy. Our conflict of interest right now is that no commissioner can enter into any, can't get paid for anything that we do. It would be a conflict of interest. So in the future, if we wanted to write a different conflict of interest policy, let's say no arts commissioner could submit any work in a proposal for 3 months after or 3 months before they were in office. That would be a policy that we could do in the future as a part of the master plan. But at this time, I announced my conflict of interest because I'm the artist and did not do any of the voting.
I'm not sure it's totally fair to make it to where the members of the board can't, if they're actual artists. But I think if we had some sort of an RFP situation where the submitters could be qualified by city staff, but the actual name of the artist, another sort of a blind review of the proposals for art projects, we wouldn't know it was done by one of our members.
Okay,
under a blind RFP, you could still.
Let's hold that conversation off to later in the art master plan conversation that we're going to have a little bit later.
Yep.
Because we're going to talk about that shortly.
I'm curious about the genesis of the project.
Okay, well, that's the genesis of it. It came to me, and then I came to the Arts Commission. Carl?
I was looking for my wave button for some reason. I can't find it. I just waved my hand. But just as a contribution, the council itself would like to see the commission come up with an overall plan, which was the reason for the public format that we did here a month or two back. But in this particular case, we have such an excellent opportunity to do something that in the minds of the council, at least from my viewpoint, was that this is a great way to show the rest of the world that the Sandy is Sandy is up and running. We're doing things that are that are showing that we still are in existence and we have things that are going on. And so I think it became such an obvious advantage for the city to have this up and happen that we went ahead and allocated money for it and are willing to move forward on it before the big plan, the master plan, the art happens. So for me, this is just really one of those easy decisions to make, but in reality, I think the council would like to see the commission come up with a master plan for the art.
Yeah.
When you normally would expect to see other projects brought in, compared to the plan to see if they fit within the plan and so on. So
Well,
sort of a
we're
little bit
going
of
to talk
history.
a little bit about that in the master plan section.
Uh-huh.
I just want to say what Carl just said, though. You said that the city council authorized money for it. Do you mean you authorize money from the city budget, or you authorize urban renewal dollars to maybe be spent on it?
I don't know that we specified a specific amount of money, but we said we would provide up to $20,000 with the idea that there would be contributions from other businesses. And so slipping over to getting my council hat off and putting on my real estate hat is our office has said more than a couple times, we would love to jump in and contribute money, buy a flower, buy a color band on somebody's head, whatever it takes to make that happen from our side. So I think once you get it out in the city, there'll be a number of businesses that would love to jump in and contribute, but that's kind of
okay, so I think Jeff wants to do a fact check on that. Can you help us with that?
Yeah, I was just going to offer that I don't think actually the commitment of 20,000 has been made yet. I think that's for June the 1st for the Urban Renewal Board.
but we talked about 20 grand being the top number, and I think we're expecting a proposal come back to the council at some time in the future. I forget what.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so I'm just going to mention before we move on to the master plan that a community member called me at home and was asking if I had a conflict of interest in having my work put before the commission and the city council, and she didn't pick up in the meeting that I was donating my design to the city and donating, you know, when I say donating, I mean, I'm not getting paid one thin dime for doing any of this, not even asking for mileage, nothing. And I have volunteered to be a city volunteer to oversee the installation of it and the process. So just to make it very clear, I am not receiving any money or any property or anything in this regard. It's simply a donation. Okay, so the Thomas mural was finished, and I think you have the report that I wrote as a volunteer artist on that project to do a summary of what was done to the mural with all the materials listed and the process. And I want to thank the volunteers profusely for coming and helping. And the report is, I hope, going to be placed into the art inventory under the Thomas Mural section, so that in the future, when there's different commissioners and different people, staff working on it, they would have a place to go and they would have the materials that were used. How should graffiti be, excuse me just a minute. I'm on my meeting by. All the materials that would be used and all of the information about it, historical and otherwise, and the people who worked on the restoration. And that way, people in the future are not trying to recreate the wheel like when you look at the mural, you know for a fact that it's acrylic paint. It has this coating and that coating. So I'm really feeling like we are doing a great service to the city's public art collection to gather that kind of information. And Lou did some wonderful photographs that need to be placed with the written material, and we would love to have a volunteer to compile the information and bring it up to date. And we're still finding out, like from Linda, that there's public art in the transit center. We knew about the fountain and the fish sculpture, but apparently some of the other art just hanging on the walls back in the offices is public, not belonging to staff. And so we'd like to be able to inventory all of those things and get those into the inventory.
This is Lou real quick on that.
Lou.
Yeah, some of the pictures I turned in from the transit center does include the stuff that's around the various offices too. So they have been shot.
Great. That'll help.
Yeah, so they're there already.
Thank you, Lou.
And Lou, do you also have all the stuff like that's inside the library?
Yep, I've got quilts and murals, some artwork.
Yeah.
There's
The
also
one
some
big
paper
piece
mache
of-
stuff
Yeah.
in the
The Mother Goose stuff
area.
and all that. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
there may be some of the paper mache items that weren't displayed. We'll find out what those are and make sure that they all get in. So the art inventory will become a part of the art master plan and be updated. Okay, one thing about the Cooke mural dedication, we've put it off from May 2nd to May 30th and now to August 8th. And so that's the new date, is August 8th, and we still need to come up with a little closer to the time. We'll come up with what the format is going to look like, depending on the Oregon policy for gatherings at the time. So probably around the 1st of July, we'll talk about that and get it out to the public based on whatever the guidelines are at the time. And Sandra, Marcia, and I are working on that. Okay, now the Arts Master Plan. So according to our bylaws, the chair is responsible for appointing committees, and the committees report back their progress, and at times it's going to be a verbal report like at a meeting or a work session, or other times it's going to be a written report. And so the master plan, I've set up a committee with Linda and Marcia and a community member, Gail Lawrence, and we would welcome any other community participation in that committee. And many cities have an art master plan. And those master plans sometimes are done over the course of several years even. They're not necessarily something that sit down and you write like you would a short essay, because there are a lot of working parts to a master plan. Just as I mentioned, there could be an extended conflict of interest. A lot of master plans include the formation of their arts commission and their bylaws and then there's a lot of documents and processes that are documented in the master plan. So we're going to be having a meeting shortly as soon as we can get it together to just introduce each other in the committee and find out what our areas of interest are as far as the working of that committee. In addition to that committee, we have a percent for the arts query kind of a work group, and they're going to be exploring a common this particular fairly common method of funding art, and perhaps even looking at other funding options for art. Marcia? Oh, you waving, or you want?
Well, I was waving at my dog outside. She wants in, and I didn't want.
Oh, she can't come to the meeting. So Linda and Marcia and I are working on right now on the 1% for art and other funding avenues. As a component of the master plan, Pam and I are working on a mural policy, which is a common thing to have as a part of a master plan. And I was talking to Kelly O'Neill, right, because murals right now are part of the sign department.
Right.
You get a sign permit for a mural. And now that Sandy has an arts commission, we're all in agreement interdepartmentally that it would be better to have an arts commission more like spearheading or being the conduit for that type of thing. And so we're looking at writing a comprehensive mural policy, and Pam, wherever Pam went, oh, in the middle. We all changed places on my screen, so.
Yeah,
Jeff.
Pam's been working on getting that together. And then I'd like some input on the next committee to be formed. And so I'll explain what that committee is going to do and listen to it with an ear to see if it's something that you would be interested in working on. The Pleasant Street Committee. I've been working with Kelly O'Neill as far as art on Pleasant Street, and in one of my emails to him, I discussed the idea of having a theme for the street, which of course Pleasant Street, it'd be a very pleasant theme probably, and some type of motif that would be repeated through the street. And that motif is something that I hoped that we could put out to the community, like not as necessarily a contest, but for ideas. And I'd like to set the committee the task of coming up with a format for choosing the theme and the motif, and also a design for the tree grates. Now, I think in your time, Linda, they did the tree grates around the
Street thing. It was on the main, during Sandy Style and all that, on the main street. And it was a design process. It was done through the planning department to come up with the fish that go around the trees.
Yeah, so a tree grate, if you aren't familiar with tree grates, the trees need the water to go down into the sidewalk around them, but that you don't want somebody with high heels stepping through the tree grate or a dog's arm into the tree grate. So having a proper design for safety, efficiency, and artistic are the sort of the categories. So I was hoping that someone might like to work on that committee. I'd like you to think about it, and you don't have to volunteer right now, but get back to me with an email if it's something that you think that you would personally enjoy working on. And then we can talk more about it later.
Work with the planning department to come up, if we're coming up with a Pleasant Street design district or Pleasant Street theme and make it a district, that it would then go through the planning department. In other words, they're going to be the ones responsible for, I know it's zone commercial, but they're going to be responsible for taking applications. And there has to be a piece of that either we have it set already in stone when he gets it, or it has to come through us so that there's nothing done that then will conflict with what the ultimate, you know, you'd hate to have a third of it get built out before we have something in place. And then you have to try. It's easier to do it when you require it and when you issue the permits than it is to go back afterwards and retrofit and make it
forethought instead of afterthought. Exactly. Yes. So they have done a little survey to the public, and the public chose for the color beetroot, which is a purpley red. And that's the only survey item.
Sort of goes with the green.
Mm-hmm. And on Main Street, the color of the light poles and the garbage cans and the benches is a darker green. So the beetroot was chosen as an offset to make it its own special district. And I think that eventually there are a lot of art opportunities and a lot of design opportunities as Pleasant Street moves forward.
Well, it's not just standalone art, it's the design of the, like you say, the tree grates, the signage, everything should flow together.
If there's a choice of style in benches and light poles and garbage cans, all those things come together to set the mood for the street. And so you want to really start with a theme, I feel, a cohesive theme that you can carry through the whole street. It becomes a district, maybe has an arch on at least one or both ends, or at least the...
You know, when you're in the Pearl District, I mean, there are...
So when Kelly's intern at the time, Christina, came to our art commission meeting and showed us the pictures of the Pleasant Street project, I have kind of kept in touch with that project as time has gone along, and excuse me a second, there's been a lot of things going on in the city. So I think Kelly is really willing to, from what I could tell, get the Arts Commission engaged with that. And one of the things he specifically mentioned was the tree grates. So that's one of the areas that we thought we could at least start working toward soon. And so if you are interested in that, if you would send me an email, please. And if there's any, I don't know, Jeff, are there any people on this meeting besides the Arts Commission?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, because we had sent a link and invited commission applicants to join us if they would like to. So I just wanted to say that nobody did, but if they had, I'd like to welcome them, but they didn't.
If we continue to do Zoom meetings,
pardon me?
We should probably have, if we continue to do Zoom meetings because of the COVID thing, we should probably have a link, since this is a public open meeting and it follows the public open meeting law. There should be a link to the Zoom from the city's webpage for any member of the public.
Jeff, like on the, Jeff, isn't there a link on our calendar to the Zoom meeting?
No.
Normally, what would happen is that the link would be on the agenda, it looks as though that didn't happen, unfortunately.
Oh.
So we'll need to definitely fix that for next time because Linda's correct.
Oh, okay. I thought it was on like on the city councils.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, in the future, if we have another Zoom meeting, then we'll make sure that that's on the. Let's see.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Linda. We'll make sure that gets updated for the next meeting if we're still doing this. One of the kinks in the pipeline of transitioning to all electronic.
We're all learning on this new process. We're adapting.
Well, Linda and Marcia and I had a meeting earlier in the week, and I thought, well, this would be a good time when it's not a formal Arts Commission meeting to try out my tablet. Well, that was a big mistake because I couldn't hear them at all, and I couldn't get, when you look at a tablet, it has a different setup than this computer screen does. So I'm glad that I didn't make that experiment
So we
at a
fixed
bigger
it.
meeting.
We fix it using phones.
Yes, so we ended up doing phones. Okay, now of the things that we've talked about, is there anybody who wants to have any clarification or spend any more time on the items that were brought up?
I had just one question, doesn't really, just for my clarification. How many of the members of the Arts Commission are City of Sandy residents? I know it's not a requirement. You can be in the school district or the library district, but how many are actual city residents?
Sandy.
I am.
Who is?
I am.
Yeah, you and me and Sandra are.
Mhm.
Is that the only two of us that are on the board that are city residents?
Lou?
This we're all city Sandy resident.
Lou
Who is?
is.
Yeah.
Okay. So half of us at least are city residents right now. Okay, just curious.
Mhm.
This is, I think, one of the only boards where I know that the city council can have one person who is not, oh no, is it the planning commission? Can have one person who is not a city resident, but is a business owner in town. So I think the Arts Commission, and if you're on the Parks Board, they all have to be city residents. I think the Arts Commission, Arts Commission is the only one where it could be at some point, all 7 could be outside the city limits. I think we might want to revisit our bylaws to make it to where you can qualify by being in the Oregon Trail School District or the library district, but we don't want to have a board with no city residents on it. At least
Well,
that's
if we go by the applicants, we might not have a commission right now with 7 members because let's see, I think.
I'm not saying all 7 need to be city residents, but I would think that you'd want to have at least half of the board be city residents, since it's funded by city tax dollars.
Mm-hmm. So
we don't get from the library district or from the school district. Yes.
I'm sorry, did you call on me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to point out that it would take more than a bylaws change. I think it's actually in the city code.
Yes, that's true. It's the city
municipal code that has it outlined the way that it currently is. The intent behind that was, my understanding at least, was to encourage a broader spectrum of artists and people interested in the arts. There was a concern that the city limit requirement would really, limit the applicant pool and the number of artists that we'd find.
I am not saying to limit it to the city limits, but my fear would be that if we don't at least make it to where, just like on the planning commission, one person can be outside and be a business owner. On the on the arts commission, I would think we want to have, we'll say right now, 2 or 3 positions designated as city resident, and not have it. It's not like we're not in danger of it being all 7 members outside the city limits, but I think we need to have some standard where at least a couple people on the board going forward would at least be city residents. I have to have at least 2 people interested in the city limits and qualified.
So our application period just closed on Friday. It was open for 3 weeks. Tyler, did you find out whether this ever got put on in the Sandy Post officially?
So my understanding, let me just turn my video on. I was able to get a collared shirt on enough to look presentable. So here I am. So yes, my understanding is that it was posted in the Sandy Post. However, it was posted in, I don't know if this is the correct title or not, but the public notices section where we post, requirements for land use or budget.
Right. And I looked in that section and I found nothing.
I didn't find it either. I never saw it.
Okay.
I
Well,
looked.
that's what I was told, but let me follow back up with with my contact at the paper and ensure that actually happened.
Okay, and it would not be this last week. I don't know if it would have been in there because that was the last week it was open, but I looked each week and I looked for the city of, they usually put the City of Sandy logo on things in that section. And I found other things, but I didn't find that. But anyway,
we might want to think outside the box in future times where we need members. Think outside the box by posting on bulletin boards, putting notices at the Avamere or Cascadia Village, because seniors are interested in and may have some things they want to do. When the school district reopens, doing some sort of newsletter out with theirs, or making sure it goes out with the water bill as a entry on the water bill that every household in the city gets, saying that we have an opening on the Sandy Arts.
I think that's a really good idea. That would go out to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so if in the future you feel concerned about not having Sandy residents on there, I would talk to the city councilman about that.
I will do that, Carl.
Carl?
Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to keep my mouth quiet out of some of this discussion because I know it's part of the commission's responsibility to interact and make these kinds of thoughts and such. But as just an upgrade there, I know that there are a number of folks on city council who are concerned about the bylaws of each of the different meeting committees and the 2 commissions. And there was a lot of conversation about how the art commission should or should not be specifically for the city limits or outside of that. And so if you go to make some of these kind of changes, you're probably going to hear some feedback from city councilmen, because there was a lot of talk about how that looked and how that was perceived and how the council would like to see that represented. And Tyler got it right about how that was. I think it was Tyler. We were looking for people outside of the community as much as we were inside because of the influence of art on our city.
I think as long as the projects are within the city limits, you won't get very many complaints. But if the board ended up being made up of all people outside the city limits and they decide they wanted to do a project up in Welch's or a project outside the city limits, you might have more of a interactive feedback from the community, because the funding for it would still be coming from the city.
Yeah, I don't think we could have
outside the city.
I'm almost sure about it legally. I'm almost 100% sure about it politically, that we would probably spend all the money within the city boundaries. I don't
The
see
only
it
exception
spending.
might be the library that we own or that's part of our district up in Hoodland.
Well,
Art going into that would qualify.
That's not part of the art.
Yeah.
Just to your point, Linda, the Arts Commission doesn't do technically anything but put forward to the city council proposals. And then we don't have, we could fund a art project out of our budget. We could do that. But even if we did, it would have to be a small one. And I don't anticipate that the Sandy Arts Commission would be thinking outside the box that far. To me, the Sandy Arts Commission's
Oh, I have
charter
options
by the city council is to use art to improve the quality of life for city residents and visitors. So that's our charter. So I don't see how we could do something that wasn't in our charter.
Currently, I would agree with you. Yeah, as the board is currently made up, I agree with you.
Well, Carl?
Knowing what the city council is, we haven't voted on this one, but I just know the philosophy of the folks who are watching the art in the city would like to see us focus on the inside of the city, and especially with the master plan, with the art inventory, all the things that we're probably needing to spend our energies on. Let's focus on the inside of the city boundaries. And as we progress and we get more influence from outside the city, or maybe we have some monies that come from outside of the city that would like to be spent outside of the city, we could look at that. But I think right now we should focus on the city itself,
right,
inside the boundaries.
Lou, once in a while, I see your telephone area light up. Have you asked to speak at all?
No.
Okay.
I think what you probably heard is I opened up a little Velcro pouch here.
Go.
So Lou, actually,
The one
because you're
that
on
said Crown Royal on the outside. Okay, so we're going to move on. I think, is it time that we can move on to our regular meeting, which is set for 1:45?
Yep.
I think we have 2 minutes, so why don't I just give you a brief, I don't know what the right word is, synopsis of the change in the agenda that we have, and it's not really a change in the agenda, but
Okay.
is a bit different than what you've seen before. When we updated the bylaws at the last meeting, one of the pieces of those bylaws were the structure of the meeting and the layout of the meeting. And so this agenda follows that structure that was outlined in the bylaws. One thing that I did not include in this agenda, and we can easily add it if you'd like to, or just make it for the next meeting if you choose to, is I removed the Pledge of Allegiance item. Some boards and commissions do it. Council always does it. Some of the other boards and commissions don't do it. So it's not included in this agenda. It was not a mandatory requirement based on the bylaws that we updated. However, if we'd like to add that back in, we easily can. And so that's really just something that's significantly different than any other meeting.
Okay, well, for me, it's a little funny to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and have you look at my navel when I'm doing that. So last meeting, I just skipped that. But I think it's appropriate, especially when we're in the council chambers, to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So when I'm chair, I'm going to ask for the Pledge of Allegiance in the council chamber. And anybody who doesn't want to do the Pledge of Allegiance can stand or sit quietly. That's okay with me. But we had decided as a group originally that we would do the pledge. So thank you for that, Tyler. And did you want to start the meeting now at 1:45?
If everyone's ready, let's do it.
Okay. And I'll call the roll. Lou Sinek?
Here.
Marcia Mural?
Here.
Sandra Jordan?
Here.
Linda Malone?
Here.
Pam Smithstead?
Here.
And Becky's here. And joining us is Carl Exner, Councilor Carl Exner, Tyler Deems, our Sandy Arts Commission liaison, and Jeff Apriati. What are you, Jeff?
City recorder.
City recorder. Thank you.
Also currently meeting manager for all electronic meetings.
And thank you for coming and joining us, Tyler. Okay, so are there any changes to the agenda?
Nope.
We don't have any public joining us. I think we've covered the commissioner reports.
The only thing I would have to add is that one of the things that came out of the meeting that Becky and Martha and I had the other day is I am in the process of pulling together all of the different percents for the arts that other communities use so that we can formulate our own policy for the city of Sandy in pursuing some sort of percent for the arts in the city's charter.
And funding mechanisms, and of course we'll be going to our city staff for a lot of help on that as well. Jeff?
Thank you. I just wanted to state for the record that during the work session, I did add a live link to this meeting to the agenda so that if anybody happens to click on it now, they'll be able to enter the meeting, although we still don't have any members of the public currently.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. That brings us up to snuff, I think. Council liaison reports. So, Carl, did you have anything that you'd like to share with us from the council's point of view?
Not at this time.
And staff reports, we have a written report here about the applications. Would you go over that with us?
Absolutely. So as we've already kind of went over, there was an open seat, or is an open seat. That posting closed about a week and a half ago. We did have 2 applicants that applied for the position. I have not reached out to the council committee that was involved in the interviews for the last appointment. We'll do that either later this week or first of next week. Something on the calendar to conduct those interviews. You know, if there's no feedback from the commission, and perhaps there is, so this is time to ask. Becky, you might be the best person to ask since you've been involved in the most recent recruitment process. But we do have a list of 10 questions, I believe it was, perhaps it was 11 interview questions to kind of get a feel for the candidates. You know, the process from my perspective has gone well, but if there's something that the commission would like to see done differently, or if Becky, since you've sat in on that process, would like to see something done differently, perhaps now's a good time to discuss that.
So for the rest of the commissioners, it was 3 city councilmen.
Correct.
You were there, I was there. The councilman and I asked questions from a list of questions to each applicant.
And Mayor Polian was there too, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, so it was Mayor Pulliam, Councilor Exner, and Councilor
Smallwood,
I believe, and then Becky and myself. I was just a silent, you know, fly on the wall, helping facilitate the meeting in the beginning, and then quietly.
and previously I had suggested that it might be nice to have a few of the 11 questions given to the candidates in advance so that they would be able to think about them and they could write or at least have an opportunity to think about those things. That really would give me as an interviewer an insight into their writing ability and their thought processes, because sometimes when you're hit on the spot, you're not going to be, some people are very spontaneous and some people have to think about things for a while. And then other questions I think are good on the spot questions to see how quickly you can think on the spot. So I would like to see the questions divided up and done in different ways so that you get a feel for the commissioners' processes. That's my opinion.
I agree
But
with that.
it is the city council who is in charge, I think, of really setting that process out. That was just my recommendation, but it's the city council who sets that process up. Okay.
Thumbs up from Carl.
Yep. And Pam,
Linda, do
what
you
did
have any
want to
feedback
say?
on how that process went for you? Would you have liked to see anything different?
I might be the exception in that it would have been fine to have stuff ahead of time to write, but I am more comfortable with being interviewed and with interviewing and talking publicly. That I could see if someone hadn't been through that process as often as I have, that they might have felt more comfortable answering some of the questions ahead of time, or at least having them handy to where they could read from them, you know, be given them ahead of time and then be able to read their composition of what they had as an answer to that question. But for myself, I was very comfortable with the process as it was.
I was very uncomfortable with the process because I had no idea what they even wanted in an arts commissioner, and I had no idea what questions are going to be asked, and I just kind of was, I didn't know what to say on this moment because I hadn't had a chance to think through any of it. So I would very much agree with Becky's proposal.
Carl?
Yeah, I don't think there's any rule or bylaw or direction from the council other than we just want to get the best candidate. I don't think that, you know, if it's telling the candidate ahead of time of some or all of the questions or surprising them at the end, I think you can discuss whichever way you want to. And I would suggest you put a proposal to the council and say, we'd like to see you change this if that's something that the commission is interested in. But from our viewpoint, we just want to get the best person. So it's the legal issues that are
where the person can, where you ask them an open-ended thing like, what do you think makes you the best qualified or the best suited to be a member of the Sandy Arts Commission? And then they can, that's something where they have to think on their feet and knowing their skills and abilities. And that shouldn't be a gotcha question because you're applied. You must think you have, you know, something to offer. So
Yeah,
asking them what they have to offer. But
I'm not really thinking of a gotcha question. I'm thinking like you're saying, you're comfortable, you were mayor, you had to be up front, speaking in front of people, so you're comfortable with that. Pam is not so comfortable with that, and she is more of a writer. So I feel that it really gives you a more well-rounded vision of the person's abilities, and they can get their point of view across.
Don't get me wrong. I think the majority of questions should be given to the person ahead of time to be able to have them prepared in writing, not necessarily to submit them. They can be asked them on the spot.
Right.
But if they're given what those questions are going to be, they will have formulated their thoughts and written them down and can answer from a more position of comfort.
Right. Mm-hmm. Lou, did you have anything to add?
No. For me, not having the written questions and just going into the interview didn't bother me, but, you know, that's part of my background. I'm used to all of that, so it didn't bother me at all. But I do agree with what the others said. You know, they're not used to it, so perhaps a couple written questions in advance would be okay.
Marcia, do you have an opinion?
The only thing that really kind of baffled me was everybody sitting up on these way up, and then I was down, and I felt like I was talking up to people. And it was kind of intimidating having all these people staring at me. And I didn't mind the questions or any of that stuff, but it was just the setup.
Well, now we're zooming.
Huh?
Felt like you were in court.
Yeah, yeah, something like that.
Carl?
Yeah, we had to change this over. In the past, we made these interviews in private, and we asked questions that might have been difficult to answer in front of people, like attitude and character and that kind of stuff. We didn't get into personal life choices, but here, I think it's been a year now ago, these things have to be done in the public open meeting format. So we could probably figure out a way to sit, we're all equal, but we're going to have to do these things now and
Maybe sit like
record
a
it. And it's just part of the open meeting process. It has to be done now. So that's, I think, the only other really required thing at this point. So sorry about sitting on a dais looking down on you.
Yeah.
Well, if you sit like you're in a workshop so that you're all down at maybe a U-shaped table set up on the, do the interview setup like it's a workshop setup so that you're all on the same level.
Well, we have changed that process a bit because now there's a hiring panel, or a better term.
Yeah.
So it's not the entire council that's doing it, it's a selection of council members and then the commission chair. So while the interview itself is still technically public record and an open meeting, you don't have a line of people standing at the door wanting to come sit in and listen to that. I know for some of the other boards, they've done a much smaller, not at a regularly scheduled meeting, but just a smaller venue type roundtable interview process, like you're mentioning, Linda, in the council chamber. So it's more informal, less people sitting there staring at you.
Yeah.
Less intimidating.
Yeah, not as intimidating, make people more comfortable while still complying with the meeting laws that we have.
And also, we are a commission with a budget, which gives us I don't know if you'd call it a fiduciary responsibility that maybe just an advisory board doesn't have. And in our meetings, we sit in the big chairs. And I feel like that gives us more of a solemnity than maybe a workshop or a work committee or some other thing. I am so responsible that I've worn my tag.
Oh my gosh, Becky.
It's all right. It's all right.
I have one.
Yeah.
I put my mayor's badge.
That's one of the things, Tyler, that we need to put on that checklist I mentioned.
Yeah.
Badges.
Absolutely.
Okay, so moving on then to the May 15th minutes. Oh, Tyler gave us a budget rundown on our current budget in the commission. That's on your agenda.
Yeah, so there's currently just over $6,900 remaining in the Arts Commission budget. I have a vague memory that there was one other commissioner that had some expenses that had not been reimbursed yet. I think
That was me.
Okay.
Yeah, that was me. I didn't know where to send it. I came to the city and it was all closed, so I didn't know where to.
So we have staff in the
How do
building.
I reach you?
So if you want
there
to
is?
call City Hall and make sure to schedule a time to come in to drop that off,
Okay.
coordinate that.
Okay.
And so this number, the $6,919, is a little bit off because I think you had mentioned about $80 in reimbursements, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I think it actually was like 70. I've got it written out. So.
There's also
Okay.
a book that was purchased, Tyler, that I think is still on my credit card that hasn't been reconciled yet.
Perfect. I do recall that now as well. So maybe shave $100 off of that remaining balance as it's currently published.
Okay, great.
This is Lou. I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
On the budget what we have left, is that a use it or lose it type thing, or does that carry over to next year, or the next biennium?
So the original $8,000 budget was for this biennium, so we still have another year left in this biennium.
Okay.
The long, complicated explanation that I'll try to shorten and not make it so complicated is that the unused balance will roll forward into the beginning balance of that department as a whole, which is non-departmental and houses all of the city's incidental expenses that can't be tied to one specific department. So the unused balance will roll over, and that will ultimately be the budget committees and council's decision whether or not to roll forward. Let's say you had $3,000 remaining. They wanted to allocate another $1,000. It's going to be up to their discretion to determine whether they want to, roll the unused balance into the next biennium budget.
Okay, Tyler. So
ostensibly, that would make the most sense, at least at this point in time.
Tyler, a lot of that on my end was digital, so I didn't really understand. It was garbled.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So did anybody else have that problem, or is it just my out here in the woods?
No, it was garbled for me too.
No, it was garbled.
Okay.
It wasn't garbled for me, but then I'm on Sandy Net in the city, close.
Let me try to do that again briefly. Can everyone hear me okay at the moment?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So ultimately, the unused balance will be rolled forward into the next biennium, into the department as a whole, the department being a non-departmental budget, which houses all of the city's incidental items that are tied to a specific department. So you had, for example, $3,000 remaining at the end of this biennium that would roll forward into the beginning balance for the department as a whole. It would ultimately be council and the budget committee's discretion to either allocate that remaining $3,000 plus any additional funds for the upcoming biennium, or just set a baseline dollar amount and say you get $8,000 each biennium, use it or lose it. And those are the things we haven't, finalized or made a decision on, because this is still a relatively new commission. But
I think as we get to the end of the year and we get to the second biennium, and say we have $3,000 to roll over that we haven't used, if we can make the argument to the budget committee at that time that yes, we didn't spend this $3,000, but project forward to the reason we didn't is because we're saving for X, Y, or Z, we could advocate for having the same $8,000 budget allotment to add to that in order to complete the goal that we have in our master plan or in our proposed projects ahead of time. In the whole process of city's budgeting going back over 20 years has to try and avoid the use it or lose it mentality, and to not necessarily save for a rainy day, but to be able to capitalize on long range planning by rolling funds forward rather than having to use them all up on stuff that you really don't need in that budget year in order not to lose them in the next budget year. And I think that argument could be made to the Sandy Budget Committee when the time comes.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Linda. The only other thing I would add to that would be the Arts Commission was just given a line item in a budget somewhere for this biennium because it was really implemented. We wanted to allocate some funding. So, long term, there may be an entirely different budget process that we look at. Maybe there's a general fund donation to an arts fund, and is just housed and always dedicated for art purposes. That's the first thing I can think of off the top of my head, but there may just be a different funding strategy going forward.
Well, if I were told that it was a use it or lose it thing, I'd be going, hey, we have an art fund that we could donate to.
There you go.
Carl.
Mute here. Yeah, I think Tyler's hit it right, but certainly I'm going to be on the budget committee for the next biennium. I would support that. I don't see us taking away your money. I certainly would like to see it move forward. It's been historically that way. We operate that way. We might even talk about refreshing the budget back up to the $8,000 or so. But, so
See how much
I'd
we're
certainly
in
be
fall
supporting
after
keeping.
COVID.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you got to know the budget committee is the budget committee. And so if there's anybody out there listening, would love to be part of that budget committee. We're always looking for members. Next.
I've tried to get on before, but didn't make it.
Well, the Arts Commission, the Arts Commission individual members have been very fiscally responsible with the money that we have spent. And we had $5,000, I believe it was, spent on our first liaison before we even realized we had a budget. We didn't even know we had a budget.
Yeah.
So going forward, we're a little smarter about knowing that we have the budget, and it's possible that in the future we'll be finding more opportunities to fund small projects or use some of it to parlay with get grants or, you know, that type of thing. But in this first year of getting, the first year we had getting started, it was a learning process. And so I think that we'll be doing better this coming year. Okay, so the last thing on our agenda is the minutes. Could you talk about those, Tyler?
So it was brought to my attention yesterday with a phone call from Jeff, who I believe had a phone call with you, Becky, about one of the votes being recorded incorrectly, specifically related to moving forward of the civil mural to the council. I had incorrectly recorded that Becky participated in that vote, and that was not the case. So that has been, hang on, buddy. So that has been corrected. You will not see that in in the minutes. Sorry, I have a small child rumbling around at my feet. So that would be the only change. It's reflected in the minutes that you see in front of you now, but the original document that was published when the agenda was sent out had that inaccuracy in it.
Also, wasn't Carl listed as present at that meeting and he was not present?
Yeah, that's been fixed as well.
Okay.
So
with amendments or with corrections?
So what Tyler was saying, for anybody who was unable to get what he said, under new business, under the silhouette mural, I lost connection and exited the meeting, and Marcia took it over. So I was not there for the discussion of that. And I did not vote on that. So the vote was 5 for and 0 against. Does everyone agree with that as an amendment? Are there any, is there any discussion?
That's good.
Good.
Lou,
Yeah, that's good.
you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I second
I'll
that.
second that.
Okay, I'm gonna call
A
on
bunch of eager
Pam.
beavers this meeting that
Pam,
I want to second the motion.
would you like to say something?
I second that.
All right, Pam, thank you. And we'll call the vote. Do you need to have it enumerated or?
We should.
Okay.
We should.
So Marcia, vote.
Yes.
Sandra,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Lou.
Lou,
Yes.
and I think I should have, I don't know if I can vote the last part, because I was not at the last part of the meeting, so we have enough.
So
we
you
have a
can
quorum.
abstain, sure.
So I'm going to abstain. I wasn't at the end of the meeting. So we have a quorum there.
Motion carries.
And it's time to adjourn. Okay.
So are we adjourned?
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Yes. So
Okay.
thank you.